Alright guys, hey, welcome back to another Unreal Engine Blueprint tutorial. In this tutorial, what we're going to be talking about is something really quick, but it's a topic that I thought was useful when I discovered this specific node on some projects I've been working on. It made my workflow a little bit better, and what I'm talking about is the select node. So if you're not familiar, the select node basically lets you put in like a wildcard variable, so it's really limited to things like integers, enums, booleans, floats, strings, stuff, your bare bone kind of variables. But from that variable, depending on what kind of variable it is, it presents you basically with two or more options, and with that option you can set it as a return value of a different variable type. So it's actually pretty useful depending on what you're doing, and I usually use it for like UI purposes, maybe to change a color or to display something specific on a text. That's what I'm going to do quickly is show you how to pretty much use this select node. So what I have here is I'm using Unreal Engine 4.15.2, and I'm using the first person template project. And I have basically just the normal project, but if you look at the top left corner, I have a text UI. It just says text block, and we're going to actually change that text and maybe even its scaling and maybe even its color, just pretty much anything we want based on a variable like an enum. So to set everything up that I already have here is I created my own player controller class. I called it BP select node PC, and I set that player controller into the game mode of the first person game mode. So right here, player controller class. And then I basically created in that player controller class on the event begin play, just adding the UI to the screen. So create, UI, what I believe that's just the create function call. Yeah, so create widget user interface call. Since I'm doing this in the player controller, you could just use self as the only player and then just adding it to the viewport. And this here is the UI. So it's really just a text component. And I made it a variable so I can access it, and this is where we're at. And I have a function I created called update select node text. So that there's a couple ways I could demonstrate how to use the select node, but what I want to go ahead and do is first demonstrate it using an enumeration, because this is what I most commonly use it with. So for example, if you have like an enumerator for different classes of character, or you have an enumeration for weapon types, you can have all these different types of enumerations that you can do specific things with. So I'm just going to create an enum. I believe you can just go into blueprints and then enumeration, and we'll just call it enum, and we'll just call it colors. That's all we're going to really deal with. Save that, open it up. We'll do 5 colors, I guess. We'll do red, green, blue, what other colors? Yellow, I don't know, pink. So we have our enumeration, these 5 colors. So now we can just close this out and just have our UMG open here. Now let's go ahead and create a variable, call it colors. Change its variable type to that enum for colors right here, or whatever you named it. Compile, and now we have our enumeration variable, and we have all these colors, right? So let's get rid of the select node, and let's pull a get of our colors, and then type in select now. See, as you'll notice with enumerations, it gives you an index pretty much for each option in that enumeration. And we could do this return value as anything. So for this first case, let's get our select demo text. Let's do set color and opacity. And this is where when I first noticed what the select widget, the select node does, it kind of blew my mind. So basically you could just plug this in to the color, and now you have slate color structures. But since we're working with text, what we want to do is split the pin. And we just do change pin type to color, plug that in. Now, without doing anything really crazy, we can now just change the color of the text. So red, green, blue, yellow, pink. It's not very pink. That's close enough. And now we could just use this function on construct here. And last, we gotta set the color. So by default, it's red. So let's look. Now it's a red color. Now we can change it to green. Now it's a green color. And blue, blue color. So this makes your blueprints, I feel, way better, and especially when you're doing things like this. Because typically, what my initial kind of process was using a switch, and then, from this, making this red. Well, let me make the color actually red. But basically, essentially doing this, and then just copying it 5 other times, And you can do that. I guess it's a viable option if you want, more stuff to happen for a specific color. Like if you wanted for red to call another function to do something else, then this would be a viable option. But since we're just changing a color, right? Using the select node saves you so much, I guess maybe blueprint space, or I guess it just makes your blueprints more linear, makes it way, way easier to read. So that's pretty useful. And you can do it, like I said, with other variable types. So say select node, set text. Now, let's change the pin type. This time we'll do a text. Now we can type in red, green, blue, yellow, pink. And now it says blue. We change the variable to yellow. It says yellow, and it's the color yellow. And pink. And I think you get the idea. Pink. So now let me see if I can demonstrate this. I haven't really checked. Maybe we can. Let's see if we can change the font size. What do I have to do? Font. Let's see if we get anything for font. So let's do get font and then set font. Because typically what you want to do is split these pins. And really just connect the identical ones. But for font size, we're going to do something different here. And we're not going to use this enumeration. We're going to use a different variable. It's going to be a boolean. And we'll just name it b large text or large size. Change its type to boolean. And let's bring a get of that. And let's do a select. And with boolean, you only get 2 options, false or true. Makes sense because it's a boolean. And we can pull this out into font size. Now we could say if the large size is false, say we want to make it 16 font size. When large size is true, maybe we want to make it something ridiculous like 60. By default, large size will be false. So let's see what our text looks like. Now it's really small because it's 16. Well, let's make it true. Now it's huge. So again, typically what you might do in this kind of situation, if you didn't know about the select node, is do a branch, right? And then from this path you do this, and make it 60. And then from this one, make it 16. And it does the same thing. But it's I think, much cleaner to use a select. So you don't have to, duplicate these kind of calls. You do it in the same call, And like I've been saying, it's much, 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 much easier to read because it's in a straight line. And like I said, you could do this with a bunch of different variable types. Let's say we want to change the, I don't know, the position or something. So set text, I think we could just do set position, or how we would want to do this. Yeah, I think we'd have to do get slot, or I think we could just do canvas slot. Yeah, get slot is canvas slot, and then do set position. And maybe we want to do, what other kind of variables do we want to try out? Because booleans pretty straightforward. Enums are pretty good. I mean, like you could do this pretty much with anything you want. So let's just do an integer for shits and giggles. We'll call this position. And what you'll notice with integers and like also kind of with floats, when you use a select, you only get two options. So option 0, option 1. So let's make this option 1, 500 in the X, and option 1, 500 in the Y. And let's see what happens. I actually don't know what's going to happen. Okay, so option 0 gets called because position is 0. So what I'm guessing here is if this is 1 or anything that's not 0, we're going to get option 1. Yeah. So for laughs, let's make this 1,000 and see what happens. This is interesting. Okay, so I think it's actually odds and evens. So let's make this 2. If I'm thinking what I'm thinking is right, then option 0 should show up. That's actually pretty cool. So position 3 will give us option 1 again. And it doesn't. What? So how does this number choose which number? This is actually pretty cool. So maybe I was right. What's 1,000? I swear 1,000 went to option 1. Okay, I guess I was not seeing correctly. So I guess when it's 0 or any other number, it calls option 0. And then if it's option 1, okay. Actually, I've been not looking at this right. Okay, now I understand. Yep, okay. So it only does 0 and 1. I guess that makes sense. It's very binary. So if it's 0, it uses option 0. If it's 1, it uses option 1. And with the select, you can't really add more to the select, I don't think. Yeah, you can't. So I guess that makes sense. And I guess it's the same idea if it were a float. So let's make this a float variable instead. Select. Okay, I don't think you can use. Okay. So you can't even use floats. That makes sense, just because it uses decimal point numbers. So it looks like you could just see what you can use right here. So booleans, integers, bytes, and any kind of enumeration. And again, that makes plenty of sense. I think you can maybe even use color. No, you can't. Let's just see what happens. Yeah, you can't. So it looks like it's integers, booleans, bytes, and enumerations. Perfectly makes sense. And it definitely, in my opinion, and I think most people would agree, using select is a really good option, especially when you are working with enumerations. But if you're also working with booleans and you don't want to have a bunch of different branches, especially if you're just setting a specific property of an object based on that value, using a select node is the way to go. But if you need to do a bunch of different functionality for a specific option, so true or false, or a certain enumerating value, if you have to do a bunch of stuff depending on which one it is, then yeah, you would want to use a switch and in branches maybe. So just it really depends on what you're doing. So again, this is something I've known for a while now, maybe like the last year or so, but I've finally been able to use the select node in a very efficient way on the projects that I'm working on. So I thought, hey, why not make a tutorial about it? So again, we're using booleans to determine the size, if it's large or small, and then we're using the color enumerator that we made to actually make the color of the text and make the text say the actual color. So it's pretty useful. So let me know what you guys think in the comments, what you thought about this tutorial. I know it's a short one. It is kind of a random topic, but I thought it was a useful one. So let me know in the comments if you want to know any other kind of topics, any kind of specific blueprint nodes. If you enjoyed the content as well, just make sure to like and comment and subscribe. You know the deal. And I'm also thinking of making a new, not channel, but making a new playlist of learning blueprints from scratch, because a lot of almost all my tutorials are kind of based on pre-existing knowledge about blueprints, but I haven't really made a full-on blueprint tutorial series on learning blueprints from scratch like I have in the past. Before Unreal Engine 4, some of you may know about Unreal Engine 3 and Kismet, and looking at Kismet now, how big of a nightmare Kismet is. But that's what I started learning initially in college. I learned Unreal Engine 3 and Kismet, and that's really got me into scripting. And because of a lot of my old Kismet tutorials on this channel, I was given early access to blueprints in Unreal Engine 4 when it was the Rocket Beta. And when I saw blueprints, man, it blew my mind. So I had to learn blueprints kind of from scratch on my own with not that much documentation. And I've been always learning ever since. So I'm hoping maybe my experience gives a good what's the word, like a good perspective on how to learn blueprints correctly and how to learn it efficiently. And that's what I'm going to try to aim with that new series. So you're going to start seeing videos like that coming out. It's going to be very noobish. It's going to be expecting you don't know anything about blueprints, and then slowly gradually teach you things. So if you already know blueprints, that's not going to be your thing. But if you're brand new, I think it's going to be very useful. So definitely keep an eye out for that. And until the next video, guys, I'll see you later.
Just hold on, we're going